You know how you can't tell if you're in a good or a bad relationship sometimes? It's easy to tell from the outside, but then once you're in it and your attachment stuff's going wild, it can look fine on paper, but you can't tell if it's good for you. And some days it might feel good, and some days it might not. And you can't tell if it's them or the relationship. You can't tell if you're being unreasonable. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Are you in a bad relationship, and how to fully inhabit a good relationship?
I feel like I spent 2 decades in the mix of that.
Yeah.
Is this right for me? Is this not right for me? And like I have landed at this is excellent for me and it feels so good. And I wish I knew these things before, right? Because it can be so crazy making when we're in a relationship and there's things we like, things we don't like, and yet something feels off maybe, something feels missing. We're not sure, what are we fighting more than we should? Does this relationship really light me up? I find that in that crazy making period, so many months and years can go by, right? And the sad thing is these months and years can go by and it's either will have turned out that it was actually a great relationship, but I wasn't enjoying it because I didn't realize it was great, or it wasn't actually that great and I was stuck in it because I thought maybe this is fine, maybe this is how it's supposed to feel. And we're losing out on the opportunity to be in a relationship that's much more aligned with what really lights us up.
Yes. And it's so exciting because now it's like, we just know how to do that and we can show you, like, we can teach you in your body how to do this. So I want to give you my 2 examples, my
Okay.
personal sad examples. One, and this is like glaring. This is, I'm an extreme sort of person, or I have been an extreme sort of person. So of course I went right to the extreme. So I was, for a bit of background for those who don't know me, I was an accidental lesbian for 15 years. And then I reconnected with this man that I had dated 20 years previously. It was like my high school love affair, like just a lot of story wrapped up in there. And we had only really connected by way of like Facebook comments and things. So it was prime real estate for making up stories about each other and deciding how the relationship would be before actually experiencing it, right? And because I had had this accidental lesbian period, which was, of course, full of stories about how men are, which in that world was, men are pieces of shit, was basically the message. I went into this with a great deal of illusion.
Mm.
And so this fella was not a good fit for me, but I didn't know that because I was so eagerly invested in it being like this magical reconnection thing.
Yes.
And all of the stuff that happened, I just was telling myself, guess this is how men are. Oops, too bad. So I wasn't able to see clearly. And then my inverse example of that, many years later, I was dating a guy who was actually a really good guy, but I couldn't believe that. I had not yet explored the territory of men can actually just be very good, loving, caring, loyal people. So I couldn't identify his goodness, and I made it something else.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does feel sad,
Yeah.
and you mentioned 2 things that I think are really important is our eagerness for it to be the thing, right?
Mhm.
I think that's a great sign. Not that eagerness is a bad thing, but it's just something to notice because sometimes we let everything fall away, everything else that we know to be true, or we don't even give ourselves the opportunity to explore what else can be true. What else do I need in a connection? Because
Mhm.
that eagerness sort of just takes us off, right? In this fast way and things just start happening. And I think when you bring together that eagerness for it to be the thing and the flip side of I guess this is just how it's meant to be. Like those two are not great measures, great indications of this is an aligned connection for me.
Yeah. It's a cage. That's stuffing
Mhm.
ourselves into a little limiting cage instead of being with whatever's present, which is really at the root of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it can be different. You can know what it is that truly lights you up and support your nervous system to be open and available to it and appreciate it and enjoy it and delight in it and co-create something beautiful with someone. And what you said about meeting a lovely man, but not being able to see it for what it was because your framework did not include that as a possibility yet. We've worked with a lot of people who have, upon hindsight reflection, realized that along their way of, I think so and so, when I was with so and so, that was actually a safe and good and really loving relationship. But I didn't trust it didn't make sense to me at the time.
Yeah.
It felt boring,
Yeah.
off.
And then you'll get the pendulum too of, oh, this was safe and loving. So even though it's not maybe a total fit, I'm going to latch on to the safe, loving part and say that that needs to be the entirety of everything.
Right.
A different limitation, shifting the limitations around.
And I think there's layers, right? You're describing to us you were coming closer and closer to your true self and essence. And each time you're like, "Oh, I realize I'm actually not a lesbian. I'm attracted to men." But the danger in that is this is the man. He must be the man. And so I find that in a series of relationships, I got gradually closer to what was true for me, a little bit on purpose, a lot by accident, until like this last time when I'm like, I really want to do this differently. I want to learn how to really know and choose what's right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
it takes intentionality, I think.
it does. And two streams of self-inquiry, I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
There's self and the other, right? So we tend to, I think, look outwards at how is the relationship? How is the other person? And we tend to not look at our own patterns in relationship unless you're doing this kind of work. And then you might go, what's my role in this dance, right?
What patterns? What
What,
own
what
patterns are you talking
pattern,
about?
right? Yeah. And we get confused because it's confusing, right? What part of this is me? What part are my fears? What
Mm-hmm.
part are my limitations? What do I actually like versus what do my attachment wounds tell me that I need to not let go of right now? And then the other person, because like the relationship's a third entity. There's two of you in it, and then the relationship is this garden that you're watering. So there's these two or three streams that we want to explore, but really the first one is going to be stuff to check within yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
then stuff to check within how they interact with you. Want to walk us through some of that?
Okay. The self piece, I really had to allow myself to get curious about what lights me up in a partner. What lights me up in a partnership? What do I actually want? What do I need? And it sounds really simplistic, but I think if you've grown up and you haven't really been encouraged to really own what it is you want, what it is you need, what is really the thing that makes you happy, and you've sort of learned to put other people's happiness and needs and wants before yours, this can be an area that we're actually not very clear on. So I needed to explore that and really own it. And what I mean by that is when I got married, I don't think I realized this about myself. So I didn't really realize I need deep emotional connection. I need the ability to really talk. Like I'm a talker. I connect through talking, I connect through touch. I didn't know that about myself. And so I married a great guy. He's like a great human being, an excellent father, a good, like just a really good person. On paper, we had a fantastic marriage. But something felt off and missing and yucky inside for a long, long time. I couldn't pinpoint what it was. And when I could finally I was starting to own it. I really need emotional depth and connection and intimacy and play. It actually got a lot simpler because he was like, I love you. I love our kids. I don't think I can be that for you though. Like that's just not in me. And I don't foresee that changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sad, but also clear and relieving in an odd way because you both know then what the truth is.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to interrupt you here because I can see this very easily being weaponized by people who don't know themselves.
Right.
When you're describing, I need play. I want play in my life. You're not having a bunch of tentacles of attachment of you need to give me play. You need to be playful. And I'm going to demand that from you in a way that makes nobody feel playful, right? When we've got our own anxious, fear-based stuff that turns into generally control of the other person, it gets so swirly inside that we can't even locate that. Like people can say on the surface, yeah, I want play, but nothing in their energy or their demeanor is actually an expression of that. They're trying to claw that out of somebody else. I wrote down, am I being unreasonable? And I also wrote down fear, jealousy, and boundaries. Because I think we can identify we want these things for ourselves, but there's so much inner work to do to make that a clear, not even an ask, but a knowing, like to make that a clear part of your reality. I need play, as opposed to you give me play right now, otherwise you're a bastard.
Yes, and like I'm not saying for me it was that clean. It was a gradual learning. It was a gradual process of ownership because I finally got to the point where I could say I need emotional intimacy, I need physical affection, I need play. But I wasn't really quite skilled yet at the time or aware to look at in what way do I bring those things to this
Mm-hmm.
relationship? And
Yes.
am I in the way of that also being a reality? Right? I wasn't fully there yet. I had just gotten to I need these things. And in the beginning it is I need these things and they need to come from you. And if they don't come from you, then this relationship is over. And what do you mean I have a part to play in this dance? So eventually it did grow and I realized I have to grow a deeper emotional connection with myself. I need to explore what touch and comfort is for me that I like personally that has nothing to do with another human being.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know what my relationship with play is and what keeps me from play. And how do I bring more play into my life separate from this relationship? Like, those are things I had to grow on
Mm-hmm.
my own. And when I mean on my own, I don't mean you have to be single, but you have to be intentional and conscious and willing to own that you have your own part of the dance to work on.
For sure. Yeah, that makes me think of trust. And people obviously want to trust their partners, but so often we're carrying in all this baggage that causes us to distrust something that's actually trustable, but we just like physically don't know how to do it.
Yes. And if I look a little bit further on that, things I wasn't willing to own, I think this prompt really helped me. What am I afraid to claim that I need and want in a partnership and from a partner? And there were
Without
things I was
worrying whether
afraid.
it sounds reasonable or not.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Right? I only realized in hindsight, I need someone who has a growth mindset, right? And who's positive, who not like this spiritually bypassing positive, but someone who believes in the possibility of like making something good together. And I was like in a relationship, this is a separate relationship with a cynic. I'm like,
Significant.
significant. I'm like,
Yeah.
what am I doing? And I remember hearing that voice in the beginning of that relationship. I could see it slightly already, but you know what took over? My eagerness.
Yeah.
My eagerness of this has got to be the one, because these other things that were lacking in the previous relationship all of a sudden were here, or there was more of it here than there was in the previous. I'm like, oh, this has got to be it.
Classic. Yeah.
Newsflash, it wasn't it.
Yeah.
Because there were other elements that I really needed that were important to me, like deep down in my core and inner knowing, that I wasn't owning yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of the tricky piece is that we are going to be attracting the parts of ourselves that we're not owning. So if we don't trust ourselves, yes, we might attract a trustable partner, but it's also pretty likely, probably more likely, that we're going to attract somebody who fulfills that story for us, that they can't be trusted. It's this wonderful cosmic joke, which is why conscious relationship with self is so important.
Mm-hmm. Right? It's the foundation. I thought it was all about just being hyper vigilant and like checking out who this other person is and are they trustable, are they not, tracking how they behave, tracking the things they say, even getting as far as saying, okay, I want their actions to match their words, which is a great thing to want. but we're still being very outward focused at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want to bring the dance together, that we're inward focused. Like, what is it that I need? I want what works for me? What does not work for me? What lights me up? What does not? What am I afraid to really claim and say I need in relationship? Get really clear on that. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's another piece of my dance, right? What is my part in the dance? How do I get in the way of connection? And like the harder question that I didn't really love to admit was, in what way do my patterns of protection get in the way of this becoming something really good?
Significant.
What? I don't have patterns of protection. They're just avoidant and they're just logical and unemotional and emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
It was easier for me to stick with that.
Yeah, it makes sense. That so I'll again tell the little story of the nice man I was on a date with, and I was conditioned at that point for my ex-boyfriend who was always taking my car, which I thought I was generous, and I am, but I didn't want him to take my car, but I couldn't admit that even to myself. So when this nice man just opened the door for me to be a gentleman, I said out loud with a snarky tone, "You're not driving my car." He was like, "No, I'm opening the door for you." Like, oh no, this was a grievous error. And this is the kind of assumption we're putting out into the world all the time. So to be able to slow down and see what's actually in front of us instead of projecting our fears and our unowned aspects is one of the keys.
I think another thing to own that, I chuckle, but I'm like reliving that moment with you. I'm like, ooh. Um, but it's a classic example of when our framework, like you used the word cage earlier, our framework is still so narrow of what's possible in another person, what's possible in a partner, what's possible in a partnership. And I think one thing that's really important for us to own truthfully is how much time, effort, and energy have I placed into looking for what's possible beyond my current state of beliefs? Because we have a lot of people come say to us, but I just don't know if it's possible. Like, and I've looked. And then the sort of devil's advocate in me says, okay, well, let's make this a practical game then. Let's take a guess at how many hours you have spent looking
In your
and
cage, by the
right,
way.
right,
Yeah.
running through only the people you've met before
Yeah.
that have shown you that beauty and alignment and generosity and all these other things that you want are not possible. Let's just say it's 2 hours a week. Okay. But I'm thinking for most people who are sort of disgruntled about relationships, they're probably spending more than 2 hours a week thinking about how people suck and there's nobody out there and whatever. But let's just say it's 2 hours. I was like, would you be willing to commit 2 hours of your week, equal amount of time? That's all I'm asking, to really going out there and looking. If someone was paying you $10 million to find proof that there are excellent relationships out there, there are excellent partners out there, do you honestly believe you would find none?
Great question.
Right?
Yeah.
We have to be willing to look for what's possible. And during my darkest of times, where my belief level in what was possible was very low, and when this became apparent to me, I was like, I need to start looking within my world and beyond. Where do I see good relationships? Because I honestly saw none growing up, like absolutely none. It's quite sad when I think about it. So I didn't know what was possible. I had a dream as a young teen and a young child of what could be possible, but I never saw it in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I gave myself the task, begin looking for examples of good men, signs that they exist. I need to look for healthy relationships where people are happy together, right? And real, not happy and fake, right? But happy and real. I need to see that that's a possibility. And when I found those few, I was like, okay, I'm just going to hang on to this. I'm going to have days where I forget it and I'm down in the dumps and I believe none of this is possible. But I always have this to return to.
Yeah.
And it was really what helped me. And there were names of these dudes, and Like, Ben was one. I remember Jordan was one, like different guys. Like, were like, these are good men who, like, they're human. They're like us. They're going to mess up. They're going to screw up. But, like, they want to own their part. They want to co create something beautiful.
They
Right.
do.
And yes. Right. And, over time, I get to tell people about my partner, and they're like, oh, he's in my list of people. I use his name as a reminder that this exists,
Yeah.
right?
Right?
And, like, that's how it trickles out. Like, collect the names of these people that exist.
It does. And one of my favorite things, especially when we're running conscious relationship training, is the women who they might think that they have a healthy relationship with the concept of men, but we've all got these stories peppered in about toxic masculinity. And when they see the men in this group own their emotions and their anger and be honest in their communication and be loving and like deeply loving and caring in a non pussy way, like not in that way that gives you the ick, but in a really like beautifully activating way, they're delighted. Like you can see they didn't believe it and they're like, yay. There's so many of these good dudes out there. You've given me hope.
Mm-hmm. Right. And vice versa. Men who come in and see women, like, yes, they're emotional, and this is what I judged them on, and felt that they were too much or crazy or whatever. But I see these women just owning how they feel and also owning their part of the dance. And also, this is the other thing that happens, I think, in conscious relationship training, people sharing the tender, vulnerable part
Mm.
behind the feeling, right? And so we're getting to see more of the true essence of each person behind their protection. That's what gets to happen in CRT. And
It's
so
very attractive.
I think people leave, they go through the program and they realize more is possible than I ever
Mhm.
thought, for myself and for another human being and for us in co-creation together in partnership.
Yes. So, okay, I want to point out some clarification here. Because I think it's easy for us to get so swept up in the realm of possibility that we end out in la la land and we can
Mm-hmm.
bypass a beautiful option that's actually in front of us, because we think, oh, well, but I want him to dance with me on Friday nights and maybe he hates dancing, but maybe he's a great partner and it's you that loves dancing and you just need to go to a dance class and it doesn't have to be his jam. So
Yes.
one of the tools I want to suggest to people when you're thinking about what's possible with a partner, for me, it's always very clear. Business relationships, clear as a bell, no confusion, no attachment issues, nothing gets murky. So when I have to think about what would I want in a business partner, it's obvious. And
Mhm.
if I wasn't having that, I wouldn't be there.
Mhm.
And I don't need a whole bunch of frilly stuff from my business partner. My life is my life. Our business is our business.
Mhm.
A primary partnership is similar. You're building a partnership with a person who can be your partner for the important stuff of life. You're not
Mhm.
building just a dance calendar. You don't have to make cupcakes together. If your passion is cupcakes, that's your passion that you get to enjoy. What you don't want is a partner who's like, cupcakes suck and so do you for liking them.
Yes.
But
Yes.
so the nuance there, I think, is important.
Yeah, and you're sort of touching on what is my vision for a partnership? Not just like one component. Is your vision that we have freedom in this relationship to explore and invest time and energy and money in our hobbies and the things that light us up? And also, my vision is that we encourage each other to spend time together and apart doing these things that we enjoy. That is something you have to claim and own if you want that.
There's a lot of tacit agreement that happens in relationship
Mhm.
without people even knowing it's happening.
Mhm.
We get in this covert contract where we're agreeing to be responsible for each other's emotions instead of actually stepping into the reality of how we want to live our lives, right?
Mhm.
Partnership is not an ultimate submission to each other. It's an agreement to live your two lives together, to build something together. And I think we lose track of that so easily because we just want someone with us.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
We want connection. But what if you could have aligned connection
Woo.
instead of just like, I guess this will do?
For sure. Well, okay. So I wonder if you can walk us through something. And actually, I guess before we do the practice, is there anything else you want to talk about?
What don't
Did
we
we
talk
really
about?
say about
Oh,
the
I know
most
what we want to talk about.
the most important part of like how you can tell? Is this partner good or are they
I don't think
bad?
we talked about that. I think we should talk about that part.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
part's important.
it is. What are they willing to do when you come to them with your feelings and whether you're attacking or not? How do they receive you, for example?
And I think this is part of exploring what it is you desire and what your vision is, right? When your feelings are hurt, how would you like a partner to respond to you? When your feelings are hurt by your partner, how would you like them to respond to you? Like, these are different things. Everybody can meet initially and have a great time. If you can't meet and have a great time together and have fun, there's already signs that this probably isn't aligned. But it's, how do you deal with the hard things? How do you deal with hurting each other's feelings? How do you deal with your attachment stuff coming up and we're all behaving a little wildly because we're scared? How do you want someone to show up when they are overwhelmed? How do you want someone to show up when there has been a rupture? Maybe a rupture caused by you, maybe a rupture caused by them. What would you want them to be able to do in
Mm-hmm.
terms of reconnection and assessing whether they share the same vision with you on that or not, and noticing whether they have the skill set and the capacity, not whether they just want this, right? It's one thing
Mm-hmm.
to have a vision and want it. That's great. But do they have the skill set and the nervous system capacity to behave and show up in this way? And when they don't, how do they repair?
Mm-hmm.
And then, do you want to say something?
Yeah, because people are not just going to automatically have that capacity. So that's not what we're suggesting. Don't
No.
just go pick people who have this capacity.
No. That's what
It's
I was
the
going to talk about.
Yeah, it's their willingness, right? So if they are also meeting you at the place of very activated nervous system and our poor communication is coming out, and even though they've said, hey, yeah, we definitely want to have, loving communications, and we're not right now, are they willing to learn how to do that? Are they willing to make the repair afterwards? So it doesn't have to start out perfect, but it has to start out aligned. And words are not the same as action, and action
Mhm.
might come after the pain point and the rupture is part of the repair.
Yes. Is there a willingness to repair? Is there a willingness, I'm going to say, to do the things that feel uncomfortable? Because depending on each of our own family histories and our life experiences, there's going to be different things each of us find harder to do. A good noticing is, are we each willing to do the thing that's actually really sort of uncomfortable for us, but would be a positive contribution to our relationship?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And is this person, including yourself, willing to do it in a sustained way, not just one off when there's a crisis, right? But like in a sort of steady sort of flow, realizing and understanding that these are muscles that need to be continuously built over time. It's not a one and done kind of thing. So is someone really in it with you for the messy and the murky and the joy and the fun? I found someone who was actually great at repair, which I was like, yay, finally someone who can do conflict and repair, because I was freaked out about conflict in relationship before. So I'd avoid it like the plague.
Right.
Then finally, I was like, you know what? I need someone who can do conflict. That's a healthy part of relationship. And I found that person. And we would have wild conflict. And I thought, oh, this is good. This is a learning lesson for both of us. And each time we came closer to each other after repair. And I
Yes.
thought, excellent, I'm in a great relationship, until I started paying some more attention, right? Because time also reveals patterns. And I noticed the pattern. I'm like, oh, I see that about every 3 days. There has to be some type of conflict. And we always repair, and it's fine. And we always get to know each other. Great, better, great. Because I realized I had to own, that is not my vision of a great relationship. I do not want that. I do not want 3 days of lovely, and then 1 day of chaos, and then 5 days of repair, and then to go through that over and over and over again. And that was like an epiphany when I started seeing that this is the pattern of this relationship. And I had to get really honest with myself. There are many parts of this that I love. And also, there is no way I'm willing to live the rest of my life going through that roller coaster of a cycle. That just doesn't work for me. Like, no, can't do
Yeah.
it.
I mean, that could be a complicated situation because he demonstrated so much willingness, right? He signed up for the courses, he did the counseling, he was really in it and genuinely, wanted that for himself. But
Mhm.
sometimes we're just either not able to be there enough or frequently enough or, sustainability as you're talking about it. This is your life. This is your day-to-day life. How much
Mhm.
of your life are you willing to spend trying to figure out if something can feel better?
Mhm. And I think that he had the potential to be an excellent partner in that way. But I don't think that muscle was strong enough yet, and there were things in the way for him. Sometimes you can grow your muscles alongside each other in relationship, right? There's just a supportive environment, and there's something about the way each person's attachment history and wounding show up that are sort of like a soft place to land, and you both sort of just practice new skills together. And then other times there's relationships where there's something happening in the attachment dynamic where you light each other on fire. Like, not on purpose, it's not malicious, but it's not really conducive to trying to grow that individual muscle on your own while being in the relationship.
Yeah. That's a confusing one for people who are very attracted to passionate people, right? There's
Mhm.
healthy passion, then there's problematic passion, shall I say, unresolved something or other, which is different than just enthusiasm that can sometimes get fiery.
Yeah. And so my main takeaway is it's all a process of learning yourself and being gentle and kind to yourself and the other people along the way. Like, for the most part, we're talking about people who are not malicious,
Yeah,
right? Just
definitely.
we have our own stuff going on.
That's right. We all do.
Mhm.
Two lives coming together. Yeah. Okay, so will you walk us through a practice for that self piece, I would think. If the
Mm,
question is, am I being unreasonable? What might we consult with in our bodies to sort of extract
mm.
our wound patterns from what's happening in the moment?
I think let's go with this. Let's have a little just reset first. I need to move a little.
Okay.
And then let's go with something I really love in this relationship is. So if you're currently in a relationship, just use that prompt. Say it out loud right now. Something I really love about this relationship is, and see how it feels to say that. Right? Notice the part when you say it, which part of your body has this sense of, oh, yeah, that's true. It might be like, it might ring 5% true or 100%. You're like, no, this is true. I know it.
I want to emphasize the body part of this. We're asking your body, not your head.
Right. And, and, a way to do this is say it out loud. Just say something I love. Like, I'll just use an example. Something I love about my relationship is I can be so human in it. And as I'm paying attention, I can feel an easeful flow of breath in my body and sort of this like heavy, sort of solid feeling in my core. And like, as I sit with it some more and I think about, oh, I can be so human in this relationship. Like, my cheeks like blush, like I smile, and then I feel some warmth in my chest. Right. So if you are still coming into connection with your body, you might not notice these things as easily yet, and that's okay. Just begin by getting in the practice of naming out loud one thing you love about your relationship and then pausing and paying attention, seeing what comes. Maybe it'll be nothing initially. That's okay. Keep practicing. Right. And if you're not in a relationship, use this prompt, something that I love, something that I really want in relationship, something that lights me up in relationship is, and really own that. Right. So I can put you on the spot, Steph. Do you want to do that version?
Sure. It's the same one that you had, so I want to pick another one. Ooh, something that I really love in relationship is mind melding, is what I'm going to call it.
Love it. So
Yeah.
if we were conversing with each other, I'd be like, what is mind melding? But we're not going to do that. I'm just going to have you return to that, something that I love about relationship, right? Or I really want in a partnership is this experience of mind melding. And just notice how that feels.
Great.
Yes.
Feels very settled in my trunk.
Yes. So it feels great. Does it also, and this is a bit of a nuance, does it also feel true? Does that statement feel true that that is something you want?
Yes. And there's a layer of yeah, but because
Yeah.
it's funny, I didn't believe that was possible with a partner, but I experience it with friends. So obviously
Mhm.
it's possible in other humans.
Right. So it's great to name that,
Yeah.
right? Part of me feels afraid that I might not find that quality in a person, in a partner, right? And then part of me also knows this quality exists in humans. And then you could also take it to curiosity. I'm curious how it's going to feel when I find that in a partner, right? So, like, there's some things that are unknown, and we can just name that it's unknown. I don't know that yet, right? So, that's one branch. Another branch to practice with is something that I find really hard about this relationship is, right? Or something I find challenging about this relationship is. Or if you're not in a relationship, it could be something I find challenging in relationship is, or it could be something I definitely do not want in relationship is, right? So my version of that might be something that's challenging for me. Something that's challenging for me is I'm highly emotional and my partner is highly logical and pragmatic. And sometimes it can take us a bit to like find what our common language is,
Yeah.
right?
And that's a beautiful thing. I remember coming to this revelation of like, just because there's parts I don't like, that doesn't mean the relationship is bad. Actually, navigating those opposite parts together is part of the beauty and the depth.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And the, my body had that response just now. As I was saying it, there was a part that was uncomfortable and knowing that was true. Like this is a true statement. And it's sort of uncomfortable that sometimes it takes us a bit. And then as I finished the sentence and I just owned that that is the reality of our relationship, I could feel a settling like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Right. And I could probably feel a settling because I also know this something I appreciate about our relationship and my partner is his willingness to stay in the game. Right. And my willingness to stay in the game to get to a point where we're understanding each other better.
Beautiful.
So practice owning these light and dark sides, right? These light and shadow sides. They're both true. And then the third one is the bonus round, which is my part of the dance, right? So, my part of the dance, something I contribute that is helpful for our relationship is. And then the flip side, something I contribute that is not so helpful for a relationship. And we want to practice doing this as just a matter of fact. It's not about shaming or judging or being hard on ourselves. When we grow the capacity to own both, that's how we get to, like I said, I love my relationship because I get to be so human. And like, this is what it's about. Being so human means like, I can do things that are super helpful and I can do things that suck sometimes.
And it would be hard and unusual for people to be able to admit that to themselves without shame. Like, whoever's watching and listening, you're probably going to feel guilt and shame if you're like most people. And that's okay. That's part of it. You will get through that to the other side when you can just hold these dualities and feel relief and wholeness as a result of them. Totally
Yes.
different vibe.
Yes. So there's a real nuance here. We walk you through owning the parts that are not so shiny and bright, not to induce shame, not to shame you. However, it is likely you might have old patterning where shame will arise. And that's actually a good thing because then we get to practice being with it. So if you notice any shame come up in you, right? Notice where it might feel uncomfortable in your body. If you want, you could place a hand there and just breathe with it. Be with it for one full inhale, one full exhale, and then hop out of it if you're done. Stay a little longer for 2 more breaths if you want, but we're growing the muscle to be with that sensation of shame that arises when I own my part. And over time, you're going to be like, oh, me and shame are sort of buddies. And
Right.
shame doesn't feel so bad. And oh, actually, maybe I don't actually feel shame about this anymore.
And which is really important because you can't actually run from it or suppress it. Like it lives in there if you don't make a relationship with it. So it's probably in you, and developing that back and forth, embracing it to some extent will be actually very helpful and relieving. And again, something you can practice like simply.
I find that the opposite muscle, we wouldn't think it, but is also important, right? Like, what do I bring in that's great? And was working recently with a couple, and you would think, oh, that's just an easy thing to share with each other. Like, oh, something I've done well this week is something that I feel like I've done well for our relationship this week is. And what it revealed is this thing that I think is actually very common that we don't talk about is some people are like, oh, I don't want to brag, so they're not really owning the beauty that they bring to relationship. So imagine that if you don't own the beauty that you bring into relationship because you don't want to seem like you're bragging, and then you're also super good at shaming yourself for all the ways that you bring in things that aren't super helpful for a relationship, imagine how you're going to feel.
Yeah. And guess what your
Right?
life becomes? That
Mm-hmm.
becomes your everyday experience.
And then there's sort of like 3 options. You then either point the finger at your partner and they're the reason and the problem that you feel gross because you're not fully aware of what's happening. Or you blame it on yourself that you must suck and you're ruining the relationship. Or maybe some combination of the two and you oscillate back and forth between they suck and I suck and this relationship just sucks. And like, how unfortunate, because it doesn't need to be that way.
And that's really the key takeaway, right? There's 2 parts. If the question is, am I in a bad relationship? You've got to look at yourself and you've got to look at the other person. And you really have to look at both, the positive and the negative of both. What are you bringing? What's your part of the dance? And how is your dance partner with this dance? Is
Right.
this a
And is
dance you
this
even want to do?
exactly right?
Yeah.
And like something that feels bad right now can become good when the right ingredients are in place, when the
Mm.
right willingness is there. But like, you also need to sense, is this bad and just going to get worse? And here's another prompt. The reality is, the reality is, if nothing changes, if I don't change anything about my side of the dance and they don't change anything about their side of the dance, well, this is where we're at. Like, are we willing to really go there with ourselves and each other? The reality is.
Yeah. I'm reminded of people, usually women, but sometimes men, who become irate when the person who they had a bad relationship with goes off and has a nice relationship with somebody else. And
I've never done that. I don't know what you're talking about.
we take it so personally, and we should. We contributed to this dynamic in some way. Maybe it's just not the right vibe. Maybe we live in different dimensions and have different desires in relationship. But also, definitely, there's a dynamic between us over which we have a great deal of power in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, practicing, okay, there's a few things I want to plug here. Our somatic integration sessions twice a month, we actually walk you through how to have human experiences, how to be with sensation, emotions, and all the stories we tell about relationship boil down to a pile of sensations in our bodies that we can learn to parse through and be with in ways that are helpful for our lives and relationships. And then conscious relationship training is where we do all of that stuff with other people plus activation on purpose. So we give rise to the things that you freak out about sometimes in relationship with other people, and we walk through it so that you can actually be with that in your actual real life. And then the third piece is our season. We're starting
Oh,
seasons. So even though this is episode 162, but we're starting a season model. We're going to try it out. So the first one is going to be slow dating. And we're going to have a lot more info about that. Slow dating, of course, is just the dating version of everything that we do in our lives. The way we approach one thing is the way we approach them all. So it'll be a season about dating, but it'll also apply to really every aspect of your life. And that'll start on July 8th. Anything you want to say about any of those things?
I have a deep desire to say, please practice owning your desires. Please, please, please.
And it's such a sweet, so we're opposites, as you know. And I'm like, own what you hate. So,
Great.
right? And both of these things, G is the light and I am the dark. Owning your desires. 5 years ago, I would have been like, shut up. What even is that? And now it's like, yeah, that's the incredibly important part of creating a life that feels good to you. But being able to get there, I think, also requires you to own what you hate so that you can discover its opposite.
Yes, yes. It doesn't matter which way you go. Go both places. Like one will take you to the other and the other will take you back. You just circle around and you just get closer and closer to your true essence. Just spoke recently with someone who said, I realize I've been performing my whole life in relationships.
Yes.
And I have put on this show that I'm actually happy with what I'm getting. That it's enough. Not just that it's enough, but I'm enthusiastically happy when the reality is I'm longing for so much more. Realizing, wow, no wonder those relationships didn't feel good. I was pretending. I was performing. Now that I really own what I really want and what I really don't want, a whole different world of possibilities opens up.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember having an energy healing once, and the woman was trying to extract me out of my assumptions about really deep love.
Mm-hmm.
And you were in a bubble. That's the visual she was giving me. And it was like, oh, it could feel like that. Like such a freedom that I just didn't understand was possible because I'd been performing and I didn't know there was an alternative. There's always alternatives.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, then that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Okay. Thank you guys for being here. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.